Okay, I'm now calling the Sherborn Conservation Commission meeting of May 4th to order at 7:15. I'll do it as a motion. I move to open the meeting.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. In this case, announce your name and your vote. Michael Lesser, aye.
Jacob Strauss, aye.
Kurt Stiegel, aye.
Carol McGarry, aye.
Courtney Eck, aye.
Okay. Okay, do we have any issues for the agenda? Oh, where's Joyce here? Where's Joyce?
She has one other meeting tonight. She hopes to be back before the end of the regs.
Oh, okay, yeah, that rings a bell now. Okey doke. Are there any agenda issues with the 48-hour rule?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, if anybody doesn't have anything, we'll stick with the agenda. And we're opening, we have 3 or 4 minutes. Courtney has an announcement to make.
I do.
You have
Oh, right, discussions. Yes, yes, may the 4th be with you. It's Star Wars Day. In case no one was aware.
Why is it Star Wars Day? Why is May 4th Star Wars Day?
You know, may the Force be with you, but may the 4th be with you.
Oh, okay. Boy,
Yeah.
that's very corny.
The
Okay.
marketing right there, yeah.
Yes. I tuned in to listen to some WCB, the classical radio, and there they are playing the Star Wars themes.
The
They-
highway signs today had dark side and so may the 4th be with you.
Oh,
But-
really?
How many people can say that they saw the first Star Wars in a movie theater when it first came out, besides me?
6 times.
I saw it 3 times, including once in a drive-in.
Wow, in private. Oh, geez. So what year was this? When did it, so I guess,
77.
okay. Geez. I guess I wasn't that into it at the time, but who knows? Well, whatever it is, I guess it certainly is an event, a thing. Let's see, now that we've covered the most important part of the agenda. Let's see, we don't have, the warrant is there. Let's see, Deborah, what is the laminates in the warrant for?
Let's see here.
Steve, okay, Steve said.
Steve is here. I'm sorry, come again, the
The
laminate,
warrant article, the warrant is for, if anybody's certain, not a lot of money, but there's just some postage. And then about, I don't know, $70 for some laminates or something like that related to, I can't tell if it's related to land management or something like that.
yeah, it was land management, I think that came from Kelly.
Okay, that was probably for some posting.
I think it was for, we were replacing, I don't know if you've been to the guided tour at the barber, and at each of those signposts, there's some little descriptions. Some of them are just kind of plain paper that's been laminated and the moisture's gotten into them. And so I think Kelly was in the process with the help of Xenia of replacing those.
Okay,
That would make sense.
so that's what that was for. Okay, so that has gone through. Let's see, the other stuff, I'll have to wait for Joyce. And okay, it's 7:20. I'm reopening the continued public hearing on the Sherborn wetland regulations, discussable possible changes of possible amendments to the regulations. First of 2 separate hearings, where we're just now roughing out some beginning drafts. Let's see now. So I'm gonna let's see how we do this. I mean, okay, hi, Matt. Matt's here too now at 7:20.
Good evening.
Hi, we're all here. Okay, so in terms of how we move forward, I forwarded an email from Matt with some work that he had done since the last meeting. I looked over the stuff there, and I guess I forgot to go back to his cover email. Whether you, Matt, brought up some issue that I was basically walking through what you had there to sort of comment on the new stuff and try to bring in some other sort of specifics, which I could share on, which I'll do a share screen. But were there some general principles that you were suggesting we bat around, Matt? I don't have your email up at the moment.
Yeah, I think that, I completely appreciate that not everyone is like really whole hog into a regulatory rewrite. But I do think that you have to get the commission members need to get to a point where you could vote on it. You could feel like you're in a place to vote on it. Either you agree with it or you don't, or you like bits of it or parts that you think should get work. So I think, one thing that from a procedural standpoint, it might be good to take the temperature of the room and see where people, have you had the opportunity to kind of look it over, get a feel for it, sort of where the direction is headed. Do we like the direction, kind of thumbs up? Do we kind of not like the direction, thumbs down? And then dig into detail, or get to a point where we start digging into detail. Maybe tonight's not the night to dig into detail. But I think that would be an important thing to do, is just kind of see how the commission's feeling about what we've got at hand. Michael has returned my draft with a number of comments. I've had some additional thinking in the interim about, one of the things that we're struggling with, which I think will be challenging ultimately, is the mechanism by which a project is weighed against the regulation, right? And I think that's what Michael and I have been kind of back and forth trying to figure out. And one thing that occurred to me just this week that might be a good model is to look at the way that the Wetlands Protection Act deals with the question around wildlife habitat. When the regulations say thou shalt not impact the wildlife habitat value of a wetland. Okay, well, what the heck does that mean? How do you measure a project against that requirement? And that is what the wildlife habitat assessment process is all about. And there's a guidebook that was produced in the 90s or early 2000s or something, where there were established a couple of different, essentially checklists. Is there in the case of wildlife habitat, is there are there standing dead trees? Is there food that's important for wildlife habitat or for feeding wildlife? Is there vertical sandy banks? It sort of went through all of the things that are good for wildlife and created a checklist. And if I'm proposing a project which is going to affect wetlands, I have to do a wildlife habitat evaluation based off of that checklist. And I go through and I look at the site. I say, are there 30-inch diameter trees? Yes. How many? Are there standing dead trees that yes, how many, and I do a complete evaluation based off of that checklist. And then whichever commission I'm in front of can look at, look at all these interesting wildlife habitat features. How are we going to protect those? So it gives you a sort of a measurable thing that you can go out in the field and look at and confirm or disagree with. And then it also gives sort of a framework for saying, is the work that you are proposing to do going to affect all those things you found out there that are valuable? And if so, how are you going to mitigate that? So it gives it's sort of a nice procedural thing that a commission can utilize to answer the question whether a project is going to have adverse impact on wildlife habitat. I think that you could take that as a model for looking at a project that's proposed in buffer zone and say, is this project going to have an adverse effect on the buffer and the wetlands that we protect? And develop a checklist, develop that that device for an applicant to fill out, that you can walk out in the field and agree with or disagree with. And then that helps determine kind of, what is the impact, and is there a way to avoid, minimize, and mitigate? So that's kind of my thinking, like, instead of trying to figure out how to insert this measurement and evaluation into regulation, I think it might be better to approach it in the way that the wildlife habitat evaluation is approached. That's really for the commission to think about and say, yeah, that sounds good, or rather have it in regulation. Ultimately that's for you to determine. But so that's something I think that is worth thinking about. And then, what the draft that Michael's sharing and that we've been back and forth on a couple of times, I think the commission needs to look at where we're at and see, do we like the direction we're headed? Would I vote for this if Michael called a vote at the end of this discussion? Are you ready to say yes or no? Or do you know enough about it yet? Do you feel invested enough? So I think that's kind of where you need to get as a group. And I think there's a lot to kind of work out in details, but you might be able to get to a regulatory conclusion on a more, sort of more readily if you're not trying to bake in that evaluation matrix into your regulation. So I don't know if I'm helping or hurting the discussion, but that's kind of where my head is at.
Yeah,
Can I ask one question about that?
go ahead.
Sure. For the what is the step from going from here's what the Wildlife Protection Act says to DEP regulations to this handbook about how to actually perform it? How are those tied together? Sort of what is there something in the regulations that says go use this handbook or not?
Yes, there is. And in 1060, which is the wildlife habitat provisions, the regulations set up a kind of, if you are proposing alteration of certain kinds of wetlands, depending on the scale of that alteration, you have to either do an Appendix A, which is a simplified wildlife habitat evaluation, or the Appendix B, more detailed evaluation. So it's worked right into the regulation. So if you are doing this, then you will do that.
Okay, thank you.
And so you could take a similar approach where you say, if you are proposing work in the 100-foot buffer, we require an evaluation of the project according to this worksheet
So what's the difference between having it in the regs versus just requiring that you do the worksheet? Is it a different review process? What's the difference?
It's a good question. I don't think I know the answer to that. I don't know why that wasn't baked into the regulation. People much smarter than I probably know why it was done that way. But essentially, my suspicion is that the regulations were written saying you shall not have an adverse impact on wildlife habitat. And then there was enough confusion and enough time went by where people didn't know how to decide whether that was done. So that sort of got developed. That's my guess as to how it happened, but I don't really know. And your town council might have a good read on that. Might be worth having your town council think on this question. Are we digging too far into the weeds for our body of regulations if we get into measurements of slope and surface roughness and soil permeability? Are those the sorts of things we want or can have in regulation?
Matt, one thing that you're reminding me of is that when we had a 40B that was originally called the Fields of Sherborn. It's on Route 16 for those of us who live in town, kind of, toward the Holliston line, toward the Holliston end of town. And I remember at that time, I spent some time on the whole idea of wildlife habitat. And so I remember there was two different versions, short and long, but in both cases, they were the kinds of things that would be very hard to put into regulations, because the short version, while it was a short checklist, it was a lot of detail. And the long version was even more. And I think it was multiple pages. So I understand that from the point of view of kind of brevity and helping an applicant kind of work their way through it, but giving them enough information to, all the information that's required, I can understand, at least in that case, having spent some time with it, why those would not be in the regulations and they'd be separate documents.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out still whether there's any real difference between it versus whether you have it as a separate document that's maybe an attachment or an appendix. But if you're still requiring it, like the regulations do for the habitat, if they say you got to do A or B, right, it deals with my issue here that I've raised about of all the information that we're talking about requiring, which I guess is how much does it vary by the scale of the project. And so we can have our own equivalent of a and B based on all these factors that we've got here that you begin to see partly on the right. And we also have it on the left is what our current regs are for the inner buffer. So I'm not sure what difference it makes in the end of you're requiring something, one or the other, whether some people could argue that therefore if you have a checklist or an appendix or whatever you call it, which as you amend that, do you still need to have a hearing process? Or could you amend that on the fly, so to speak? It becomes a sort of what's the process for amending what information you need? I guess I'm curious what this thing, my feeling at the moment is that it doesn't make much of a difference either way. It's more a matter of figuring out what these, which I was thinking tonight we could walk through is this part of the draft where I have it all marked up here to see what we think of the factors, whether we take them out and put them in an attachment or an appendix or a checklist, or leave them in the regs. I guess we can do some work on that.
I would prefer having them in a separate worksheet appendix or whatever, just because it would make the scope of the thing we have to review and agree upon smaller. We could put it into separate units or separate discussions.
Well, I guess, yeah, we still have to Yeah, I could go either way. It's just a matter of getting to that specificity of what it's actually going to look like. Whether I still worry about what it means to what our ability is to change it or not change it, and what we call it. And whether it's just if it's just a policy or it's a formal checklist that you just have to do. Your project is altering more than 1,000 square feet of a buffer zone, therefore you have to go do checklist B. That's maybe not much different than figuring it out here. So I don't care. I could go either way, and it could just be an attachment to our regs, which sort of it makes it part of our regs, but it's in a different place. But we could ask. I guess we can go look into that level of detail, the reg issues with our town council in the meanwhile, but the question is for the purpose of tonight, what level of discussion is useful. I was willing to sort of go through and sort of come up with this sort of work through this kind of checklist, what might be in a checklist or what might be in the regs based on what Matt had done before, and then he added some. He did a little bit more since our last meeting, and then I just sort of walked through it and tried to do it. And then I didn't get to the point of trying to reconcile what we have in our current checklist on the left-hand side. Is my screen, are the words big enough to see? I can make it bigger.
Yes.
Do people want to talk about at some higher level? Any other comments before, or does it make sense to sort of walk through this list? And then we can revisit where it might be.
This is Zach McBride, 6 Maple Street. I have not looked at these red lines or blue lines, but the one point I wanted to talk about was the sort of a renewal of a notice of intent, or a partial renewal of a notice of intent, or order of conditions, I should say. But I don't know if that's been addressed here.
Yeah, that's not in the stuff that we're working on now. It's a partial renewal of it's basically an extension of an order of
Yeah,
conditions.
or partial
That's what
completion and an extension, and the fees related to such and
Right.
things of that nature.
That we'll have to deal with. That's not going to come up tonight. I can't tell if we did a little of that in a previous meeting, but I'll make a note of that we can go back and look at an extension of an order. It's really an extension of an order of conditions. And right, there's the cost to expire.
And I guess I raised the issue in consideration of my particular situation, which if it wasn't for COVID, I would be, very hard pressed to comply with the 3 years, where the majority of the work in the jurisdictional zone was done well prior to the completion of the home. But unfortunately, because there's no capacity for that, I think we would otherwise be in a hardship. So I just wanted to highlight that situation.
Sure. No, we could look at that separately. It won't be done tonight, but that's something that we can look at, and often sometimes with exceptional circumstances such as COVID, and there was also some extensions of the life of orders of conditions that might be in place that went to 5 years, I think, at one point. We'd have to go look at that, but and we've also dealt with sort of exceptional cases and waived fees and things like that if they make sense, so that we do have some discretion. But we're not going to deal with that tonight, but I made a note of it to that before we because this is we're going to have to
Thank you, Michael. I apologize if I'm not totally up to speed with all of the progress.
Yeah, that's okay. No, let's appreciate comments like this so we can put it on our list. So it's on the list. Okay, Steve.
I just have a quick question on what jurisdiction, I guess. Any kind of extra conditions or whatever is only within the 100-foot buffer zone. I ask that because for some species, it might need more than 100-foot buffer zone to protect them or allow them to migrate or whatever.
We haven't, it's only the 100-foot. We have not taken up the task of whether we wanted to extend our buffer zone beyond 100 foot. That has not, there's a few towns that do that in Massachusetts. But that's not a topic that, or a proposed change, unless you want to propose that, that we've entertained at this point for our regs. Unless,
Okay, just to make a simple point, to protect some species, you need more than 100 foot buffer zone in some instances. That's the only point.
yeah, no, I mean, you read the literature, they ramble around up to 750. You can see some of it in the guidebook. I don't know whether anybody wants to argue or whether you, Steve, want to say we should consider more.
No, I just wanted clarification, that's all.
Okay. Carol, before.
Yeah, I just, the comment I would have, and this isn't specifically commenting on your edits here, Michael, although I can't tell how, if they end up being really extensive, I think I would agree that it would be better to pull them out separately. But I was kind of doing my homework from the point of view of what Matt put in that email, and that he wanted kind of feedback, whether this is directionally, how people feel directionally about this. So I know you're bringing up one issue, Michael, is, the level of detail we should be going into. But I would just say that my feedback about having read through it all is directionally, I'm on board with it. I think it's that all of the language here that kind of is clarifying about what we're trying to protect is super helpful. And to me, those are the biggest changes, obviously, really, because we didn't have that kind of language. So that's an overall response. And Michael, I think, certainly your edits are useful, and I'm happy to pitch in on talking about what to do with that. But that's an answer to Matt's assignment.
So one thing that, you might consider doing is plucking the definition, the burden of proof, preamble, some of those things that bolster your existing regulations, inserting those, like applying or getting them worked into your regs. And then if essentially you've got a good no alteration zone regulation. There's a lot of detail here. There's a lot of things that you are saying are important and should be protected. It might be easiest to just say, this applies to the whole buffer zone. It's not just the inner 50. This is how we protect our buffer zone, our 100 feet. And then sort of all the sort of details and things that I've sketched out, maybe that all is redundant and goes away. If you feel like the protection you have for your inner buffer, if we just extend it to 100, we kind of accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. But with a well done preamble and a little more work in definitions and burden of proof, we strengthen the regulations that we already have been working with. That's a perfectly reasonable outcome as well.
Yeah, but I think, well, I guess part of why I thought we were not, that I don't find that satisfactory, is because I'm being a little black and white, is that we were trying to be more specific guidance, as opposed to this. You're not supposed to do this, not reduce that, and it doesn't give us enough information, doesn't specify the kind of, as we've talked before, it doesn't give the basis for us to decide whether those things are being met or not.
Right.
And that's where we're trying to be more clear. That's what I thought mainly the major thrust for me is that we want to get a little bit more specific and clear about what we're looking for, so that we can actually make these assessments. And that whether it's in an appendix or an attachment or in the regs, is neither here nor there, but I think our thrust is to get that level of detail that could help guide us and the applicant. And
Michael, I have a
If
question.
I might make a suggestion, as an attorney who deals with complicated regulatory issues on a regular basis, I think that
Zach,
have
you're interrupting and you have to be recognized by the chair. You have to.
why don't you raise your
apologize.
hand? Raise your
I
hand.
apologize. I apologize. I was not meaning to interrupt. I
Just
apologize.
you raise your hand and I'll.
Recognized by the
I don't know
chair.
how,
you
I don't know how to
speak.
raise my hand.
You can do it in Zoom. There's a thing.
Well, you know
that
what, Carol, I think Carol, you're probably the last person to be speaking to me about appropriate conduct, but that's a different discussion.
Zach, we ask.
Hold on, that's not an appropriate comment for here, okay?
I think it's an appropriate comment.
No, we
I think
basically
for-
did.
I think for behavior threatening my family and my contract is an appropriate
We're
comment.
not gonna, this is not something we're gonna deal with here. Okay, that's not on our agenda here. And you did speak out of turn. You need to raise your hand. I let it go before. I didn't know because it was a topic, but generally people are raising their hand.
So
Okay,
I'll try to figure out how to do that.
Okay, please do.
I'd like to go on the record to say that that is a falsehood. I have never done what he said, but that's it. I don't want to say more.
It's a he said, she said it, and I don't, that's not appropriate for here. That's something we can talk
This is
about.
not, this is not on the agenda, and we need to get back to the regulations hearing, please.
Yes, okay, Carol, what were you saying?
I was going to say that I agree with you that that is one of the intentions, and I just want to clarify. To me, kind of the thrust of this has been more along the lines of framing things more broadly. So, Michael, are you in agreement with that language that Matt has put in here? Because to me, that's most of what has been written here.
Yeah, I think it's all important. I have no problem with that. I think it's a good basis for what we do. And so, I mean, at some point, people have to read that broader stuff. We haven't gone through that line by line, except for there's the one important issue about lots there that was highlighted, that I highlighted in the last draft too, and it's highlighted in his draft. There's one substantive issue that's sort of not buried, but in that preamble and other kind of stuff. But yes, I feel like all of that kind of preamble material is important for justifying and providing the context for what we're doing. And I think it's all well worded. I just want to get down to the specifics so that we have something that we can actually, us and the applicants can work with. So at the higher level, that stuff makes sense to me. It's a matter of getting down to the practical. I mean, I'd like to take a run at that tonight. Although we see how much time we have here. Before you go to Zach, just so you know, I want to just get the commissioner's feelings on this higher level. Jacob?
To Matt, to your, you had questions around the high level direction and also how we might proceed. I'm aligned with most of the high level direction. One area that I would like to come back at some point in the future, probably not right now, is the approach for the minor activities exception. I worry that might be too restrictive as compared to today. And the other question you had was whether one possible outcome might be the preamble inclusions and then change our existing 50-foot to 100-foot no alteration zone. I don't think that would accomplish what I would want to, at least, because it would be too restrictive for existing lots, existing homeowners that have structures, lawns, all sorts of things that are much closer to wetlands than we would permit today. And I think we have to be more realistic about what's appropriate there. So I like the structure that you have in the draft, where it's differentiating between changes towards undeveloped, developed, new lots, existing lots. I would like to have a version that goes down that direction.
I agree with everything Jacob just said.
Me too.
Yep, so do I. I'm on board with that.
So yeah, no,
Agreed.
my main reason I have it up on the screen here is just to see whether we did the work before us. How, as we go through this current work, how we try to see to what extent that is already getting factored in or not. I mean, or whether we want to keep it in a certain way. That's why I have it next to the current changes. Okay, but on the higher level, I think in a general sense here, and right, and going through the specifics, I think I'd just like to get through it all, a draft, and then revisit this higher level issue of where we put it and how we word it, and revisit that level after we go through all the specifics. Zach, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you, Michael. I was just I agree with Jacob, and I was gonna suggest that to the extent that there's an expansion or a more of a restrictive perspective on the mass standard, that sometimes what municipalities and agencies will do is issue guidance on particular issues, and then that will develop an iterative process for which to develop further more clear regulations. So if there's an ambiguity in the extension of something, then maybe guidance would help in that process.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't think we're, except for a few cases, looking to extend or make things more restrictive. We're actually just trying to be more precise about what are the factors we're looking for in terms of defining whether there's an impact and how we would word conditions and things like that, so that it's good guidance for everybody there. It's not clear to me that this is, except for one or two instances, that'll be clearly highlighted when we go to the next hearing process. That would actually make things more restrictive, but point taken. We'll be revisiting this again after this approach, which way to go. But to move forward with our remaining half an hour or so, whether we want to walk through just try to make a walkthrough of these specifics as a way to just get our heads wrapped around some of these things here. Is that okay if I start with that process now? Anybody object? Then I'm going to go through. There's some definitions here that people need to review. I don't think it's worth doing it here. People need to make comments on them. I actually was trying to figure out whether we're defining credible evidence versus the preponderance of credible evidence. I think the definition is credible. I think it's up to the commission to decide whether it's a preponderance and whether we don't need to, that we'd actually make that kind of edit, maybe clean up this thing here. Structures people can comment on. I don't want to wordsmith this. People just need to go through and give specific feedback and send it to Courtney and me and Joyce so we can aggregate it for another meeting. The burden of proof, how this is worded, this is where it gets into the set of specific parameters or issues that we're looking for. And for us to even, so that we're looking for the burden of proof is that it won't harm the interest of the bylaw and the state act. And this is the kind of information and issues that we're looking to, that we would make some determination about whether it's harming, as Matt was talking. One of the issues here I have in this draft, which was this issue of a complete analysis of existing conditions. And again, that whole issue of how do we moderate what we ask for, depend on the scope of the project. There are projects that are we have to figure out how to, and I almost want to come back to this after walking through it all, and we could see whether once we have a set of factors, whether we walk back and figure out, is it, we get stuck on the fact of whether, as the matrix that we'll have below of, is it in the inner buffer zone, or is it the no alteration, or is it in the outer? Is it already developed buffer or altered buffer really, or is it undeveloped buffer? And and whether the analysis, the evaluation and analysis we're looking for will almost sort of vary by that matrix of 4 boxes. And so we're going to go. Question is whether we come back and whether we walk through these, because right now he has it broken down into this sort of existing conditions, and then has this section here of about whatever 6 bullets, and then it moves into see, he had a set of 4 bullets or 5, and I was adding a bunch of bullets that I just wanted to talk through to see whether we want to include them or not, and how we define all these bullets. And I don't know to what extent it's useful to combine these 2 lists. I was struggling with that. And whether to just walk through each of these one by one and then come back to the organization, if that makes sense to people. Does anybody object to that? Or we just, and then people want to comment on, make specific comments on any of these first 6 bullets even. I don't know if that's a way to do this as a group. Zach, I'll let Zach, what do you want to comment on these?
I would just like to speak about some of the conditions in Sherborn, which is you have sort of neglected farmland, which has been altered, in the last 50 to 100 years, and then potentially neglected. And so, you have alteration that's not necessarily natural. And I don't think the regulations accommodate a homeowner's intent to rehabilitate, let's say, an altered yet neglected situation as well as they could.
Okay, point taken. I think that could be added to that matrix issue of, it's part of that definition issue of what's altered and not altered, and do that. But okay, point taken on that one. But let's walk through these factors here. I'm going to bring us back to that. Does anybody want to comment on? I mean, I have some questions here. I'm not even sure what soil roughness is, for example. That may be Matt. Even I didn't go back to the guidebook to go figure what that is.
Yeah, that's just sort of a characterization of how easily water would flow across a surface, right? So the rougher the surface, the more challenging it is for water to move across, right? And so that increases the amount of time that water is resident on a surface. It increases the amount of material that gets filtered, that is allowed to settle out. To put it sort of overly simplified, a rougher surface is going to be better at protecting an adjacent wetland than a smooth surface. If you're considering the same slope and width and so forth. All other things equal, a rougher surface is preferable.
How is that defined? Yeah, how is that? I'm trying to see how that varies, like here's below here in red. I copied from the guidebook.
Yeah. I mean, texture and permeability, that gets at the same, that's kind of the same thing. Your textures at the soil surface of the material that you've got. And so that's something you can ask an applicant to characterize.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out whether these 2 conditions here, soil conditions and soil and surface roughness, should really be one topic, I guess, is now that I'm hearing this.
Yeah, it certainly can be.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess I mean, even characterization seems it's like, I'm not quite sure what that word seems so general. I could see a description of the level of disturbance, just akin to a little bit of what Zach was saying as to what people want to say about to what extent it's developed, altered, or not altered. Whether that's what that first bullet, whether it's really.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you could maybe parse that out into a number of different essentially check boxes. Right? Like this is historic farmland that's been abandoned. This is current farmland. This is currently maintained as lawn. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could sort of brainstorm a bunch of different existing conditions, and that sort of incorporate the idea of level of disturbance and the nature of that disturbance, and turn it into a set of check boxes that an applicant needs to present to the commission.
Okay.
I mean, essentially, one thing that I struggle with in my own filings and in filings I review, we have to create narratives for the projects we're trying to permit, and those narratives can be very, very detailed in terms of what the existing conditions are and what's being proposed and what the expected results would be. And I think that's what the commission needs ultimately, is a really good understanding of what it is now, a really good understanding of what's being proposed, and then a really good evaluation of what the likely impacts of that proposal will be, right? I mean, that's what you're trying to get at. And based on all that information, does it meet your requirement that there's not going to be an adverse impact to your wetlands and to your buffer zone? Right? I mean, I think that's the arc of what we're trying to accomplish in any body of regulation, in any review process that we enter into.
I mean, that's what we already do. The question is right. Is this going to
Yeah.
help us improve our process?
Right.
Is the goal.
And how do you define the information that you want from an applicant so that you get what you want, and that something that you can work from, right? And make that decision. Yeah, we think that the work that's being proposed is going to be okay. It's going to meet our requirement that it doesn't alter. Or no, actually, it seems like what you're proposing is probably going to have an impact, and we can't allow that because it doesn't meet our regulation, right?
Well, turns out to be a negotiation about mitigation and things like that, right?
Can be, yeah.
Yeah.
But you've got the regulation says thou shalt do or do not something, right? And then you need tools and mechanisms to evaluate a proposal against that.
I wonder. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Go, Jacob.
I wonder if it would be worth walking through these items in the context of one of our most common projects, like a replacement of an existing septic system or something, for example, and say, is this particular item going to be useful for that? And then separately for a large project that we see rarely, but it would be the ones where they'd be particularly important. I'm not sure what that kind of thing would be.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, I'm worried about asking for too much in general, that we sort of know what we need. So I mean, it's not as if our process is that doesn't work so well now. And somehow we get the information. Whether we ask it. Right, that's, I mean, for all I've been pushing for some of this specificity. On the other hand, I'd like to be practical in terms of what you really need for a given project without overburdening everybody. Because it really is, so yeah, I mean, I could believe that maybe this list is it's only in certain cases that we'd ever want some of this stuff. It's rare that we have to ask about what whether these are just a checklist for us internally. It comes back to your view of whether it becomes more of a checklist in an appendix where we just figure out, okay, here's a project that has this kind of stuff. Okay, this is for us to say, maybe this is the kind of information we want for this project when we open a hearing or something like that.
I think that's what I was trying to get at with
Yeah. I see.
the work in undeveloped buffer zones where you want more protection. Work in previously developed buffer zones where you're gonna back off some. And then discretionary exemptions where you can say, you know what, it's minor enough that we don't, even though it's undeveloped and it's gonna have, you know, work in the 100-foot, we feel like it's a small enough impact. So that's why I had sort of drafted what I drafted.
Right, without all this detail, and whether if this becomes our own internal guidance as to what we can ask for depending on the project, or we could think to ask for against the project.
Yeah, and then
that
you're
makes
not,
it sound more like a policy.
Right,
yeah. Then you're not requiring someone that's coming in with a septic replacement, which you really, you know, you
Oh, yeah.
want, because that's going to improve the wetland quality, right? You don't want to run someone through the ringer when they're trying to do something small like that. But someone comes in with they want to do a new single family house on a completely undeveloped lot, and they're proposing, you know, a swimming pool and deck right up to the, you know, 20-foot buffer. Yeah, you know, we want, that's materially different. So I think if your regulations are set up in a way that says, you know, like this, if you got a project in undeveloped, and to Zach's point, that there's a little nuance there, is there's nothing that is truly untouched
that's for
in
sure.
Eastern Mass. But, you know, if if it hasn't been worked for 50 years or something like that, that's different, you know. But anyway, like that kind of level of segmentation of your regulations makes a lot of sense to me, where someone can look and they can make a case. And that's what comes down to the burden of proof, you know, like, hey, I'm coming in with a minor project. I don't think I should be subject to this section because of reasons X, Y, and Z. And then you can say, well, we agree with that or we disagree with that, you know. So I think that that was really sort of the reason that I kind of tried to create it the way I did. And then how do you get at the question of, you know, that evaluation of the project and likely impacts is kind of what we've been grinding on tonight. But
Matt,
Steve?
can I ask you a question about that? You're suggesting in the section on burden of proof, which we're looking at now, I think Michael had suggested that maybe this first bulleted list, that maybe that's too much detail, or that in some cases we won't need all that information. Are you suggesting then that we might change up the organization somewhat, or are you saying that we should leave this section as it is with the understanding that in the performance standards, we make it clear that the performance standards are different depending on, you know, the conditions on the land?
I think the latter, and the reason for that is that in your burden of proof, you're saying to an applicant, hey, prove to us that you fit in this box, and you know that you're coming in as a project, a minor project under whatever the section is. Prove it, you know, demonstrate. Don't don't just come in and say, hey, I'm a minor project, I should be exempt. Why? Demonstrate that. And this is how you do it. You work through the burden of proof that and so, yeah, I think that's what I would argue for.
Okay.
One follow-up question to that. In the examples here, it says the applicant shall present. Is there a reason that it says shall there instead of something like may require?
Oh, I mean, yeah, just so, I mean, that is a decision you have to make, the things that you require absolutely and the things that you may ask for. That's, the choice of term there is critical and something for the commission to kind of see where we feel this is something we always want.
Okay.
And if it's something you always want, then you use the word shall.
Right, we, like in our current regulations, we require a table of proposed alterations, square foot in and out of the different buffer zones. So that kind of stuff is in our standard stuff. And whether, right, whether we're gonna have right, we have to be very careful about what we put here. On the other hand, we might want to ask for more depending on what it is, but we have to figure out what it is we need to do based on that's a minimum, and then you can go up from there depending on the project's more complex. But right, I wouldn't want to overdo this. Like, I have an issue here, right, with the wildlife habitat. I mean, Appendix A, the A one is fairly trivial, but it's still a matter of, for a lot of projects, we don't need all of this information.
Right.
And we have to be real careful about that because it's a burden on everybody.
Right.
And Steve, you've had your hand up for a while.
I just have a question maybe for Matt, but for really everyone. I can see the logic of this treating big projects that are undeveloped land to pre-land that's already altered and small versus whatever. But I want to ask about, can we write those in a way that seems like it's fair? So say a big developer said, well, you let this landowner put this within the buffer zone, why can't I? That'd be my concern or question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Steve. And one that bears a little thinking, I think. On the one hand, it's like, it's kind of obvious, right? But then someone comes in with a circumstance, and it's yeah, you have to make sure there's proper parity being expressed in reg and practice. So let's make a note of that and think on it.
Well, to just be clear what the minimum is and what, that's right, the shall part should be fairly circumscribed versus what it is that we might ask for more information, depending on the type and scale of project. Now we got to sort this out, or whether, and again, whether it's the checklist thing, that we don't have all this, we have to get down to the performance standards, which we're obviously not going to get to tonight, I guess. Zach, if you have a quick comment, you can make it, but then we have to figure out how we're moving forward. Because we only have 5 minutes. Did you have a quick comment?
Well, thank you, Michael.
Whoops, you're muffled. I couldn't hear you.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Okay. I don't know what I said. I couldn't tell if I heard a thank you, but who knows?
Thank you.
Okay. There'll be more opportunity. Going forward now, since it's already 8:15, we have a hearing at 8:20. I mean, we could, we have the 8:20 and then an 8:50. Question is, I don't know whether to spend whether for the next meeting, whether since I'm the one who seems to, that I'm coming up with a lot of specificity, which on one hand, I keep saying to myself, I don't want to push this. I just want to be practical in what it is these things mean if we ask for it. Part of my goal here is that if we care about soils, I just want to know what it means to ask about soils. We might not ask about soils in many projects, but I'd like to use this exercise so that we know what it is we're asking for, if we ever do want to ask for it, and how to interpret it. And I don't care where it is. I just want to have that database, that sort of resource for us, so that we're not just asking for things and then wondering, well, what are we really asking for? And why? So I'm very flexible to not have a lot of this here if we can't figure out how to bound it so that it doesn't get out of hand, but I just want to get the detail. I can't tell whether for the next meeting, whether if somebody can, I guess one or two others can join, whether I just have a separate session with Matt walking through all of these things to make a cut at specificity, and then figuring out again, making a cut at what's the shalls and what's the possibles, and what should be under a burden of proof versus just information we want to have. So that, because I'm just trying to figure out how to effectively do this, because as a group of us, not many people are talking, and we haven't gotten through the specificity. Or whether as a group, you don't care about all the detail. And it's just that bigger picture of what's in the shalls and what's in here and what's not in here, and how we're going to make that decision. Carol. Guess what, Carol?
Sorry, so sorry. To me, when I look at this bulleted list, it is comprehensive, but on the other hand, we have had applicants, especially for projects that are in less like new building projects, the bigger projects, where they will just routinely include this. So, I mean, the parts, there is more here, like we don't typically ask for an inventory and map of any invasive species, but we do usually see the species list, the percent cover. That's kind of a standard thing we see. We also see some kind of classification of the soils. We don't, I mean, the slope comes out in the topo maps, existing conditions and level of disturbance. Sometimes there's a reference to it. So, yeah, I think this does come back to the fact that depending on how big the project is, in a bigger project, this all seems like completely reasonable information to ask for in this list that Matt put together. And kind of the rub comes in these smaller projects, like, I have to replace my septic system. Well, and it's in my lawn. We don't need to know all those other things. And if we go on a site visit, we can observe some of those things.
Right. From a site visit, we could tell, in the plans, we could tell what more we need. It's almost like we just need to define a minimum, and then we have our checklist of what more would we want to ask, and how do we ask it, so that we just don't say, oh, we want to know about soil. What do we want to know about a soil? I mean, they could just give us something, and it doesn't mean anything. This thing I'd like to think would say, we want to know about the roughness, or we want to know about the type, and it's not complicated, but at least we know what we're getting and how we'd use it. Whereas now it's like and so I could believe that a lot of this becomes just a checklist beyond or just a thing of these are the possible areas we might ask about depending on the scope and type of project. Boop, 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 boop. And these are the things we're looking for, but we don't require it. We just say these are things that we might ask, and maybe that's all we need to include, and that's good enough. Okay, it's getting towards 7. Whoops, just clicked over. I'm going to try to take a cut with Matt and see if some others want to join in that sort of thing there, so that we could clean this up, and then people should read all the other text. to see whether you're in agreement with the preambles and all the other kind of stuff. And think about the issue of new lots. So that we can see where people are on the higher level. And whether people really have wordsmithing to that, read that line by line, because these are regulations. And so they have clout. And they're more, in this case, they're basis, but and be prepared, and you feel free to send in comments to Courtney, me, and Joyce, and we can compile that into a document so that we avoid the open meeting issue, and we can at least see a bunch of stuff together on that. So I'd like people to do that for the next meeting. No, it's only in 2 weeks. We could at least try to do that, and I'll try to work something out with Matt. Is that good enough for now? We have to figure out when we're continuing this to. What do we, Joyce and Deborah, what do we have for our?
You have land management on at 7:20 for 30 minutes.
Okay,
I haven't had a chance to talk to Deborah, but there's a RDA for a D-box replacement that I need to talk to her to see if we can advertise. It came in after she left for the day.
oh, so we
But
should,
other than that, I'm not aware of anything else that's on the
so we need to do the D-box thing. So we need to plan a schedule for that.
that we can put that to the end if we can confirm that after the.
So why don't we do, so this thing, I'm gonna move it to 7:50 next week, and we can.
Okay.
And we can give it, I guess we can always open and close it, I mean, continue it if we do the D-box at 8:30. And if that's quick, then we can, if that's looking quick, we can close the reg thing and maybe open up the reg thing for another 20 minutes or so after the D-box thing. That we can decide on the fly next week, depending on how we're feeling and the time and what progress we're making. Okay, I move to continue this hearing to 7:50 on May 18th.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Carol,
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
and Courtney.
Aye.
Hope I got you all. Okay. Now. Notice of a public hearing. Notice hereby given that the Conservation Commission of the town of Sherborn will hold a virtual public hearing using Zoom technology at 8:20 on the 4th, or 8:23. On the 4th of May, 2023, the hearing will be heard pursuant to chapter 131, section 40 of the general laws as amended, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetlands Bylaw, chapter 17, may be changed, to consider a proposal by applicant's representative Karen Skinner Controlling for the construction of a sewage disposal system within a wetland buffer zone at 22 Ash Lane, map 8, lot 45. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will be given opportunity to speak at this hearing. Okay, do we have the green cards and all that kind of stuff?
Should have the white cards anyways. I have all the green cards.
Or some colored cards. We're okay with that? Okay. Okay, I guess we will, you can, let me show you. What am I doing here? Sorry
Can you
about
put
this.
the plan up, Michael?
Sure, I can find a plan somewhere. Let's see, PICS plan. Let's see if this shows. Well, this is just the overall one. That's not that good.
Michael, can you see my the plan up?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. You guys disappear when I start looking around. Where am I here?
So Karen, if you want to
So Karen Scannicatroni, representing the owners of 22 Ash Lane. As Michael stated, the owners are looking for an order of conditions to replace the existing failed septic system. The replacement system is proposed outside of the 50-foot buffer. The system is designed pretty large to accommodate high groundwater. It's designed only for a 3-bedroom house. There's no trees removed in association with this project. The project will create 2,617 square feet of temporary disturbance within the 50 to 100-foot buffer. And when the project is complete, it will be loomed and seeded and returned to pervious area. I'm sorry. So it's, as you can see, it's placed on the side yard outside the 50-foot. We had some well buffer issues to deal with. As I stated, no trees are coming down. And if anybody has any questions, that's about it.
So Karen, this is my understanding is this is a geoflow system. So it's the type of system that lets them minimize the amount of grading. Basically, you're going to see just the same lawn that's there now.
Right.
When it comes back. So they've there was one ornamental tree out here. I think that's going to be coming down.
But we didn't show it, yeah.
But the rest of the trees are there's really no trees out here. I gonna stop sharing. I did take a couple of pictures.
Oops.
This is when you looked at the plan, you saw a ring of stones with the 2 trees. This is where the wetlands are. The wetland line comes up into the lawn. And then this is standing with the wetlands to the back. Across the street, she has flagged another wetland, and this is the area right here where that system's gonna go. This is that one tree, I think. It's I don't think it's a consequence as far as buffer zone tree removal, but it's something that was planted right in the middle.
So there's also a mound on the side, on the picture that you're looking at on the left side of the screen. There's a mound that goes up so that there won't be any silt eroding that way.
Right, and this is standing on the street looking back, so you can see there's also a stone wall around these trees, so it also helps buffer the wetlands down below. You know, one of the things you sometimes ask for are plaques, but honestly, I wasn't really sure where one would put those because the wetlands come right up into the lawn. So, you know, if you put them on those 2 trees, you're already 25 feet, 30 feet into the wetland. And this is, well, the perspective is off a little bit. This is standing at the top of the hill, looking down the hill. So I wasn't really sure where to take this. I don't think you'd put a stake in the middle of their back. This is actually their backyard.
So can you go to a picture, go back to a picture that showed where that wetland lawn is? And where is that on this picture?
So it's behind me.
Behind us, yeah.
Yeah, so it's behind, I'm standing looking towards the street.
Okay.
This wetland is behind me. So when I turn, see this little stone wall here?
Right.
When I turn around, it's like that little stone wall is, I'm standing beside it, looking down.
Go back to the plan and show me where that wetland is. Are you putting back the plan up?
I'm trying.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
wait a minute, there it is. I see it. All right, so here's that ring of, there's the 2 trees that I was standing next to them taking the picture here, so.
And the actual lawn that's in wetlands is?
Right here. So the actual, this is, we saw the shed, this is
Oh,
grass.
yeah.
The skunk cabbage are in this area here.
Would we want to put markers just at the boundary of the existing lawn then? Just
Yeah,
to make
there's
sure
a-
it
there's-
stays where it is?
Yeah, there's 2 trees there that would work.
How wet is it? How wet is that? Oh,
I'm sure during the,
okay, how wet is
summer,
that?
I'm sure during the summer it dries out. So there's a couple trees here along the edge that the plaques could go on. This is obviously mowed and maintained. Well, your soil, you must have found soils through here. There's a
I did, yeah.
vegetation that kind of looks like wetland also.
Is there a, I mean, Karen, is there a possibility that that could be somehow returned to an actual state? We don't usually do that with septic systems, but it's kind of unusual. I mean, to find find an example where somebody is actually mowing the wetland. We often have people who are mowing the 5100. I clearly the homeowner has no idea that they're mowing the wetland, but is there?
This isn't a new house. They've been doing this for years and years. It would be a big, and I guess I'll let Karen speak for the homeowner.
Yeah,
It's-
they
I'm
have.
just- I'm just asking because it's a side yard and it seems like they still have a pretty decent sized front and backyard, but I can't really tell from the scale of the
No,
plan.
they actually don't. That side
Oh.
yard where the septic's going is really all their front yard. Because it's also got the driveway over there.
Okay, so yeah, right, like to Carol's point, right, whether it's always nice to get back wetlands, but I guess in this case, it's part of their existing use. Even though it'd be nice to get something back, but yeah, so what conditions do we have here besides maybe putting some plaques on the trees?
So I would add the two, adding what, two plaques, is that? There might be a third tree down along the edge here, or should we say 2 or 3 plaques?
Yeah,
3, okay, 3 plaques along the existing edge of lawn.
is there anything worth going in the other direction? I'm a little,
The yard ends, right, the property ends right about over here.
oh, okay,
And the wetland ends there too, it kind of turns out the other way. There's a, as I stated, there's a mound there,
The
so.
high point.
what other conditions are we thinking
So
about?
I basically just did the standard, one moment. So the only conditions would be, erosion control, pre-construction meeting, erosion control, as-built plan. And then, these 4 markers. This was the difference on this one, between this one and a lot of others, is they used a system that's not inexpensive, that really has minimal impact. And that's a huge advantage, so. So there really wasn't anything other than just monitoring and an as-built plan. There really was no conditions that they weren't taking down trees. They're outside the 50. So I wasn't, can you think of anything else you'd like to add? In addition to the three plaques?
No, it seems pretty fairly limited, straightforward, and it's certainly obviously an improvement. Especially given its proximity to the wetlands.
Yeah, it's funny. I stuck it in the folder just because I was checking to see if we had a DEP file number for our other application, and DEP felt the need to put technical comments on this. Like, they never comment on anything.
No, they just what they did was they inserted the standard comments. They
Yeah.
said anything that's outside the 50 is presumed to protect the interests of the act.
Exactly. It's like,
Right.
Like they were giving the comments to the commission.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was like,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks.
Yep. No, this one seems pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Any other comments from the commission?
I just have one comment or question.
Sure.
Looking at the plot plan, looks like most of the lot is in wetlands. Can we ask that those wetlands not be extended beyond the existing mowed area now? Or is that sort of goes without
They
saying?
shouldn't be, they won't be extended more than the mowed area now. You really can't mow any further than they mowed.
Well, that's presumed. That would be a violation.
That would be a violation, yes.
Correct. Any other comments by commissioners? Okay. So I'm ready to basically, so it looks like we have the conditions and that this thing could go forward. I'm ready to close the hearing unless, I guess I don't hear any other questions or issues. I move to close the hearing.
Second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I. Carol? Do.
I'm really sorry. I should maybe stay unmuted.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, Jacob,
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
Courtney?
Hi.
Okay. I will move that the findings are that the proposed project consisting of decommissioning an existing cesspool and pit, removal of a 1 3-inch ornamental tree and installation of a replaced septic system. The work is within the 50 to 100 buffer zone, part of the.
Access is in the 50, and that's why I put it there.
Okay. The actual work is with that is in the actual septic work is in the 50 to 100 with access through the 50. Based on the documents submitted, the notice of intent by Karen Skinner Catrone. Is it Catrone or Catroni?
Brony.
Sorry.
But that's okay. Don't worry.
I'm sure that's not the first time.
Yeah.
Dated April 10th. And the site plans prepared by Civilized Solutions. The commission hereby finds the proposed work to create a replacement septic system will not result in adverse impacts to the adjacent wetland resource areas. And with the conditions met in this order as proposed below, as discussed, let's put it that way. I don't think I have to read the rest of the findings there. Therefore, I move that the commission finds that proposed project can be approved subject to the findings and conditions discussed. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, any further discussion?
Do we want to check to see if there's any abutters who would like to say
Oh,
anything?
yes, I always forget to do that lately because we seem to have people here. I'm not sure who they are. Or any other comments? Hi,
Hi,
sorry about that.
that's all right. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you.
I had a question about the tree that's going down because it's going to be sad to see it go. It's very bare there will anything be able to be planted in that area afterwards?
It's
Sure.
very shallow septic system, so my guess is they won't want to plant anything over that area.
Okay,
Right.
that's what I thought.
Unfortunately, But you'll be getting cleaner water as a result of this. Because
I'm just in a butter.
No, I'm saying as in a butter, as in
Oh.
the water quality in the area, to the extent that groundwater and infiltrations go there, you're going to get better treatment of the sewage from the
Well,
cesspool.
that's great. It does flow from my place to their place, so
Okay, then somebody downstream will do better.
somebody downstream is gonna get great water, yes.
Or we're all, well, when it mingles down in the bedrock area, you never know how things mingle down there.
This is true.
So that's why we have to clean up everybody's septic, because it does make a difference, no matter where you are, upstream or downstream, when it comes down to bedrock levels. But yes, unfortunately, yes, it's a shame to see these trees go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Any other comments from the public? Just speak forth, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. I think that was part of our discussion. And if there's no further discussion, I'll do a roll call vote. Michael, aye. Carol,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Okay, go forth and clean up the water.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Yes, okay. We have, the last hearing is in another bit of time. Let's go to a discussion item here of, we have no minutes, we've done announcements. 21 Russet Hill Road, is that something we could talk about in the next 9 minutes?
Sure.
Okay.
Leland, you're here for this.
Oh, hi,
Yes.
nice to see you. Thank you,
So-
welcome, Tom.
So you had submitted an administrative approval application to do planting in the backyard, but really you're still under an enforcement order, so that those plantings can be approved under that enforcement order. And I think that's what we wanted to discuss tonight.
I'm sorry, those plantings can be approved under that enforcement order.
Correct.
And I guess my understanding of the enforcement order is that if, yes, I wanted to see about moving forward with plantings. The, the choice with the enforcement order was to basically restore the area versus just not touch it until there was a NOI, is my understanding. So I guess what we're requesting is administrative approval to put in the native plantings.
Or it sounds like you don't even need to request that. But basically, it's under the enforcement order, there was going to be plantings. It's just a matter of whether we just agree whether they fit within the enforcement order. Is that the issue, Joyce? That,
So I think Leland, you were gonna go back and discuss how you wanted to proceed, and I think what you're saying is you would like to go forward and put the plantings in the areas that we had discussed. Get everything
Yes.
stable, get everything stabilized, and then just move on.
Right.
Okay.
And, we looked into, I was a little bit confused as to like whether I even need to go forth with an NOI. But when I was getting such estimates that cost more than installing the native plantings to do that in a previously maintained area, then that's why we drafted this letter we don't want to make another misstep, but at the same time, it seemed counterproductive and yes.
I think we're okay. I think it's pretty
Okay.
straightforward now. Is that if this is what you want to do, that fits with the enforcement order,
Yep.
you can just move ahead with doing it. Is that?
Okay.
sense,
Wonderful.
Joyce? That makes sense, everybody? Joyce?
Yeah, I think I was just looking for the commission to agree that this, if this is what we discussed at the last hearing, this is where
Okay.
that erosion control was, that there
Yep.
was a barrier around there, and she's got native plantings in front of that. So this is that flat area that, if you remember, the toe slope comes down in this area here, and this is the flat area. The old swing set was tucked over in this
Yeah,
area.
behind the winterberry, it would actually extend over in that corner. So. Okay, wonderful. Well, then we will put this in, and I don't think that we will ever, and then as far as the enforcement order, I mean, we really don't plan to try to do anything further. We were just taking things up and wanted to put this in,
So
so.
once,
I don't
once
think
the
there's any-
plantings are installed, then we would do an inspection and then that would, I guess I need the commission to agree that the planting plan is sufficient.
This matches what we were talked about in the past?
Yes.
Okay. No, certainly remediate things there, and I can't remember if we have in order in an order of conditions. We would just have whether we'd have to follow a visit of the fact that make sure these plants survive to some degree, or whether we don't have that. Do we have anything like that in the enforcement order, or it's just a matter of an inspection once it's done and let it go?
We could probably do an inspection once it's done
Okay,
and take pictures and document it.
right. Okay. Any other comments from the commission?
Could you, I mean, would you vote on that, accepting this plan as
Sure, we can do that.
for the enforcement order?
Yeah, we could do that.
But any other comments on this? Everybody, this is, people remember, I can't remember when this was and who was on the. I
This was
can't-
last year.
Okay. And so some of you might have seen this, but this is. For those of you here, I remember right, we were going to fix that up there. There were other things going to be done, but that I could see why you've backed off on some of that. Okay. If there's no other comments, I move that this planting plan will be sufficient for meeting the enforcement order.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote, Michael, I. Jacob,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Carol,
aye.
Courtney.
Bye.
Okay, go plant. Sure,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay, we got that done. So let's see. You have to get ready for the let's see, administrative approvals. A whole slew of them there. Are they all
They're not all approved. You have what, 2 minutes?
yeah, we can walk through just name the ones that are, just walk through them and say whether they're approved or not with the address.
Sure. So 21 curve distribution box is approved. 122 Lake distribution box replacement is approved. 32 Saddle Hill Road soil testing was approved. 18 Wood Street soil testing was approved. 39 Wildwood Road, that's septic and a well installation that was approved. 10 Brook Street, pool and pool deck and fence were approved. 70 Elliott Street, pool deck and fence was approved. 71 Goulding Street, I'm doing a site walk tomorrow afternoon. So that's will be continued or discussed later. 44 South Main Street distribution box replacement, that's turned into a that's the request for determination of applicability. The wetlands weren't reflected properly on the original design. 73 Washington Street, the soil testing was proposed in the buffer zone. Dan McIntyre is going to redo his sketch and resubmit it to take testing outside the 100. And 59 Hunting Lane Sport Court site work was approved.
Okay, so there's only 3, okay.
Oh, and there's one more that's not on the list, and that was 5 Deerfield Road soil testing.
Is that approved?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to leave now. I'll be back at the end of this.
Although you don't have to, because we're basically finished everything. You mean, you're
Oh,
looking for,
I can, yes, if you are you gonna end after the next meeting?
yeah, I think that's, unless you have any other side issues.
None to discuss.
Okay, then I think this is, the next thing is the last thing on the agenda.
Right,
And I'll talk to you about the AA stuff after your site stuff tomorrow.
sounds good. All right, good night, everyone.
Okay. Good, let's go, let's see here. It's 8:51 already. We have 60 South Main. Okay. Notice, got this thing right here, okay. Notice hereby given that the Conservation Commission of the Town of Sherborn will hold a virtual public hearing using Zoom technology at 8:50 on the 4th day of May 2023. The hearing will be held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws as amended, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetlands Bylaw to consider a proposal by the applicant's representative, GLM Engineering, for the installation of a 5-foot chain link dog fence within wetland buffer zone at 60 South Main Street, map 11, lot 139A. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Office. All persons to be heard, being the opportunity to speak at this hearing. Okay, so I guess we are should I share a screen with the plan, I guess? Is that how we want to?
Yeah, that would be helpful, I think.
Okay, there we go. Let's see here. Unless Bob, Rob, you wanted to do it, or I could do it. Do you care?
I can walk through it real quickly, Mr. Chairman, if you want.
Sure.
So for the record, Rob Truax of GLM Engineering Consultants. You might want to zoom in a little on the actual
Yeah.
area that we're working in.
Okay, let's do that. Let's see here. I'm supposed to put it.
There you go. So the folks are looking to do a fence in the back area for the pet, for the dog, so it can't wander off. And just to clarify though, it's not a chain link fence. It's going to be more of a wrought iron fence. If you were out to the site, which a couple of us were, it's going to be the same as what the neighbors put up on the right-hand side if you're coming down the driveway. It's like the long wrought iron type fence.
There, yeah, I put a picture of it in the meeting folder.
Okay.
I can show that in a minute.
So we did go out there and take a look, and we could see exactly where it was going to go down between the trees, and it does encroach into the 100-foot buffer. It does not encroach into the 50, obviously. It's on the inside of the wetland bounds that were installed during the construction process. He put them out on the 100-foot buffer, and it is behind the plant where the plantings are going to go. The plantings aren't in yet. They haven't put those in. The yard's not. But when we were out there Tuesday, the lawn's not in either. It's just loomed and looked like they were putting the sprinkler heads in and getting ready to do the lawn area. So it does encroach into the 100-foot buffer, as you can see. And then it comes back out and it goes over around the ledge outcrop and then back into the corner of the house.
Does anybody want to make, if you're through, should I, let's see the pictures. Oh,
We do have the green cards.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Courtney.
Should I show the pictures or? What
Sure.
do you want? Let's see what we got here. I'm going to stop sharing this and switch to another screen. Here is,
This is just at the end of the driveway, looking straight back towards the wetlands. You can see the limit of work, and I don't know if you can see the wetland bounds. It's kind of small right now.
yeah, I'm gonna. Let's see if we could,
But the bounds, I mean, the bounds are right at the edge of the limit of work. I mean, I think you can pretty clearly see where the shrubs start and the altered area is.
right. And I'm trying to think of where that is on the plan itself. And I was trying to show it with the plan.
So that tree that's dead center of your picture, I mean, it looks like there's a bound right in front of it.
Yeah,
That the fence is going, if looking at it the way we are, it's going just to the left of that tree. Goes in right there and then cuts, takes a left-hand turn along the backyard.
okay, yeah. All right, I was still trying to. I guess that's even a better,
I
easier.
think that, yeah, that's the wetland bound sticking up at the edge of your screen on the right. Yep,
This,
right there.
and what is it? And it goes back.
And then it goes through the trees in the back.
All right, I'm trying to think of where the, oh, that's the fence we're talking about.
That's
Yeah.
the fence we're talking about.
That one's the neighbor's fence. Yeah.
Right. With that, and it's above. So going to be a gap at the bottom, or what is?
Yeah, yeah, it is a slight gap at the bottom around some areas higher than others, depending on the terrain.
They're trying to contain a dog, so I don't think it's gonna be like a significant gap, but
Right.
you can see how the fence looks.
All right, do you want me to go back, anybody, to the fence?
What do we think is the gap again? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I mean, so when I had initially spoken with the developer, I said, this if they leave several inches below the fence, that falls under exemption, but they don't want kids and dogs to be able to dig under. So I don't think there's any guarantee of a gap underneath. But you can see how the fence is designed. It's not going to be a chain link fence that they're like burying into the ground. So
Got you. I think though we have had the condition in some cases to have, and actually I was noticing that Matt had it in the proposed language to have fences that allow wildlife passage. So I think we have talked in the past, or we have conditioned in the past to have, I don't know, enough under there for like a turtle to get through, like 4 inches or something like that. I don't know, Michael, if you remember what we've done.
I mean, I think the idea here is to keep dogs and wildlife separate, or at least that's what I think the applicant's asking for here, which
That's my understanding as well.
seems reasonable for both sides. I've seen too many cases of dogs and wildlife ending badly for multiple parties.
Am I sharing a screen here that you see both of them side by side?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, this back part.
So you can see where the patio is and
Right, this is the patio here.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the
that's that one.
patio here. And the fence is gonna be going off in the woods here, somewhere all the way down here. And then going well beyond into the distance here. Is this kind of the fence where it
And
goes
out of
down
jurisdiction. Yeah.
and out of jurisdiction. Over here, I guess it goes out of jurisdiction.
Correct.
Okay. And okay,
Michael, are you looking for comments from the other
yeah, by all
commissioners?
means, keep going. Let's figure
So,
out.
from looking at so I did visit this site with Courtney, and the one request I would have, which is, I don't think it makes sense to ask for a gap at the bottom of the fence, but I do think it makes sense to try and minimize the area of undisturbed land that's undisturbed area that's within the 100-foot zone that would be on the inside of the fence. So one way we might do that is to, if you look at the plan, leave the, or sort of see if we could leave the corner of the fence that's closest to the driveway, so the northernmost, leave that exactly where it is proposed, but move the, as you go down to the left towards the ledge, have it proceed that more parallel to the edge of the patio rather than moving away from it. And that
Along
would,
where the cursor is talking about.
yeah, something like that. I'm not sure which side of some of those trees it would make the most sense, but try and figure out if we can at least up to the 100-foot zone, 100-foot bound. After the 100-foot bound, go whichever direction.
They could do whatever.
Makes sense.
I think that's a good compromise.
I can't see my Zoom anymore. Let's see who's here. Is it just Rob? Is it just you or is the owner here too as well, or?
I thought they were going to be. I don't know if they're on. I can't see they're going on here.
There's Dave O'Brien here.
There's Brian said he was going to be on the meeting.
Yeah. The only person I see is Dave O'Brien.
Yeah.
Dave O'Brien.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Did you want to, Mr. O'Brien, are you here for this project or have any comment? I can't see.
Nothing. We
Okay.
probably bored him to sleep.
So Jacob, what you're thinking is like, we show a row of trees there. They're kind of like skirting down those 4 big trees.
Yep.
So running along here. So
essentially, we just go to the other side of the 4 big trees, kind
Yeah.
of meander down through there.
Correct.
I think that would be excellent if that's a possibility.
Okay.
I mean, still, I understand because the layout here, their patio is right at the very edge. It's a very small area back there, and maybe they don't want their fence like right next to their patio seat.
It would be, I mean.
Yeah, but
it
having
still
it
would be about
screened.
20 feet off the patio.
Exactly, and it'll be screened by all the native plantings and,
we're just talking about running it behind all the plantings, basically.
Yeah.
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 Go on the other side. We have like 4 big trees there that we're skirting on the we're on the wetland side of them.
Right.
I think if we went on the upland side of them, just basically skirt them on the other side is what we're
Yeah.
talking.
I mean,
Yeah.
right, depending on what it's like for thing, right, whether you're just outside of them or inside of them, as the cursor has got here, but whether.
Well, I think you're one level too far in.
Right through the word woods. See the word
Yeah,
woods?
that would
I'm
be
thinking
like.
go right through the double O's,
Oh, you're talking about through here?
Yeah,
right through there.
Oh, okay, behind, with these trees being on the
Right.
inside. of the fence.
inside, yeah. Those are the big trees on the other side of woods, towards the wetlands. Those are the ones he's talking about.
I guess, where are these trees? These are like this one here, I guess. on the
Yes.
edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is the 22. I think that one is the 22-inch pine.
Yeah.
that's
Correct.
on the plan.
Yeah.
Oops, I went too far.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Why can't I? Oh, I see. Sometimes it lets me do it, sometimes it doesn't, or my machine's reacting. There we go. Okay, so that one there is this 22-foot inch pine there here. Okay.
So I guess we could make that revision and submit that to you. If you want to make that, close the hearing.
We're
with the
talking about, it
condition.
would come inside of that 20, it would basically be
Yes.
running through here.
Right through there. Go right
Okay,
through
that
there
made
where you-
sense as
yep.
opposed to running.
Yeah, no, that would be.
No, stay off the bushes. Yep,
Yeah.
right there.
Okay.
Right through the double O in the word woods.
Does that make sense to you who've been out there, Jacob and Courtney?
Yeah.
Run it through
Yep.
here
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
and run it, and then run it sort of through that. Whether they can even run it over here, just.
Once
They-
they're outside the 100-foot buffer.
They can go
Yeah.
nuts.
Just come a little bit, bring that point in here, and then they can run it out there. Just to keep less of the buffer.
Yep.
So we agreeing to something around here, moving it even
Yep.
from here? Okay. Uh, okay, so are there any real conditions on this? Other
I have
than,
a question.
sure,
Uh, for the part that's all looks like dirt, was that lawn before?
Oh, so I should probably give some background. So initially, there was an order of conditions for this. And so initially we thought, oh, this is easy peasy. We'll just put the fences, a little amendment. But the order of conditions is expired. So that's why they needed to put in a new notice of intent. So like that, there's a whole, and I put the previous order of conditions in the folder just so you could see it. But like there's a whole planting plan and like there's a whole thing there for the whole rest of the project. That's like a little lawn area.
Okay, quick question. Were trees taken down to create this dirt area? Is
Yes.
some of what's in the buffer zone?
I believe so.
Yes. Yeah, there was an order of conditions to build the house, and
Okay.
the dirt
okay.
area that you see is just, they haven't finished the construction, so they're still putting in the lawn and the landscaping. But yes, there were trees cut down to build the house.
I can't remember what mitigation we got or how we conditioned that.
It involved a second lot, I think. So there were two, this was one lot, I think, and a bunch of buffer zone was restored elsewhere or something.
Okay, so we had some mitigation for that, Steve.
Yeah, no, that there was a
Oh,
whole,
okay.
it was,
I got
yeah, there's a whole order there if you want to take a look at it, but like, the bounds, the plantings, and then there was other buffer that was given back, or it was something to do with other buffer zones, so.
Okay.
Yep. So this isn't like negating that, this is just put in a fence now.
Makes sense.
Okay, so there are no
The,
real conditions.
no, I
And
mean,
then, how is the fencing gonna be done? By hand, basically? How is this?
you're stealing my agent questions.
Okay, sorry, excuse me.
No, go ahead, ask it. I'm a terrible agent. Rob knows this.
Okay, so we're not gonna.
Yeah, they hand dig them with post hole diggers.
Okay,
Yeah. And then I don't know, literally the only thing I could come up with is like what to do with the spoils from the post holes,
and that'll just be,
not in the buffer zone.
right. Okay. Um,
I did start on the findings and the special conditions, and it was very hasty this afternoon. So that is in the folder.
okay, if I go back to,
So like, if you want to read findings, I got findings. Hopefully I haven't written anything embarrassing.
no, nothing you do. Nothing you do can be embarrassing.
Yeah, my kid doesn't agree with that.
So Courtney, he has to finish the work under the old order, correct?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
what happens to the old order? Are we extending that, or is that going?
no, you can't
away?
extend an expired one, but Michael, can't you still, can you close it out?
No, you don't close it out till he finishes.
He still needs a certificate of compliance. It's just more,
Correct.
it's just more
Right.
expensive on with an expired order.
Right. But we can't extend it once it expired, right, Michael?
I think so, unless there's some state level stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that it just becomes pricier.
Oh, the filing fees more for
Yeah, the
expired.
filing fee when it's an expired order, because
Yeah.
so there's an incentive to keep things in place or to stay in compliance with the timings. So. Okay, but yeah, often you can't have two open orders, but in this case, it's two different types of projects, so we're allowing this in there. making progress. Okay, so the only conditions are really where the spoils go and hand digging this thing here. And
Yeah, so there's probably a lot of special conditions. that have to
do we
get
need any
delivered.
monuments on anything? Just even for
We
the,
don't, because the monuments are already there.
oh, and the other order. Okay, fine.
Correct.
Oh, I see those things. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
got them.
Just need the plaques, so
Yeah, right.
they're already
Those are
in.
there.
They are, okay. So there's no other real conditions. Okay,
That was all I could come up with.
okay. Anything else from the commission before I just speak up since I can't see your faces while I'm doing the share. Before I close the hearing? Anybody from the public who's here or anybody want to just speak up?
The public left.
Okay, anybody? Okay. I move to close this hearing.
Second,
Let's see here. I guess I don't have to share because I'll just read some stuff here. Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I. Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney,
aye.
Carol,
I,
Eve. Was that a yes, Steve? You're muted. Yeah, I'm not sure we take, we don't want to
Yes.
take any signals. Okay.
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
Okay, hearing closed.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
No, we're still gonna move to approve your project, but you could go anyway.
Oh.
You can still
All right.
leave, but we need to get a revised plan for you.
We will send in a revised plan.
So
You
subject,
might want to make that a condition.
Yeah.
it's part of the motion. Subject to receiving a revised plan, I move that based on the findings that the proposed project of construction of a 5-foot metal fence in the rear yard of a single-family dwelling that within the 100-foot buffer zone not result in adverse impacts to adjacent wetland resource areas subject to the conditions discussed here. And therefore, the Conservation Commission hereby finds the proposed project is approved. As I said before, subject to the findings and conditions discussed and the revised plan to be received within the week. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I. Jacob,
Aye.
Carol,
I,
Steve,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Now you can go leave and get us a new plan and
All right.
keep those dogs away.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yes.
Thank
see ya.
you.
Okay, do we have any other business before us? Okay. Go read the general stuff on the regs, send comments in.
This was
Careful,
a good meeting. Look, it's 9:13.
there we go.
Yeah.
I could reopen the hearing on the regs.
Good night.
that's okay.
I got my cue from that one, but seriously, read the details of what Matt said, since we're gonna have to literally vote on something sometime soon, and I mean, we're gonna get to revisit it at the next hearing, but this is the time where you suddenly say, oh, yes, like weigh in on this. What do you think about having if a new lot is created? And could you even have a structure in the 100-foot buffer zone if it's unaltered? That kind of stuff. So we need people to think about that, so as to doing it at a meeting. On that note, I move to adjourn at 9:14. Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote, Michael, I. Jacob,
Aye.
Carol,
I,
Steve,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Done. Gee, so the first time under 2 hours in a long time.
yeah, that's great.
Let's start a new trend.
Yeah, right. I guess I gotta remember to stop the construction.